What is going on, everybody? Just want to do a quick Marvel Phase 4 Comic Con recap review. I know we're like a week or a week and a half late. But right now that Game of Thrones is over, Marvel MCU is probably the biggest thing that I'm invested in, like as a whole. Um, because the anime is like come and go. They're so seasonal. And they take such long breaks in between. Um, Especially like some of the ones you really enjoy. Um, but Marvel is like it's ongoing. Like every what is it? Every 6 months, every year they come out with what? 3 movies? How many came out this year? Um, Captain Marvel, Endgame, and Spider Man. Yeah, so like they pump out 3 a year. So I mean they're on it. And that's pretty much the biggest like huge thing I'm invested in. Like Game of Thrones took so much time, and like Marvel is pretty much it. So seeing all they like dropped and went over Comic Con was pretty huge, and some of it was pretty jaw dropping. Um, some of the biggest news, I would say the biggest announcements that we got, because if you've been following along, like if you're not someone just that just goes and sees the movies and you kind of follow along on Twitter and kind of the inside stuff, you already knew a lot that they were doing before they came to this big announcement. So things we already knew that they announced. You knew there was going to be a solo Black Widow movie. You knew there was going to be an Eternals movie. They even announced Angelina Jolie was going to be in it months ago. Um, you knew that Hawkeye was getting a TV show and that Loki was getting a Disney Plus show, and same with Wanda and Vision. Like you knew all that. Um, so that wasn't anything new or pretty groundbreaking. The stuff that kind of like blew my mind. Um, I mean, number one is the Blade. The Blade announcement like really blew my mind. And I'm just thinking when I think about it, I'm trying to think like how far they take it slash who he teams up with, because like everybody that's had their solo movie, they've kind of gotten roped in, or to get the solo movies into like the whole like Avengers story plot where they all mix. They kind of all intertwine with one another, or at least have a single character that they overlap with. Ant-Man and the Wasp had Falcon. We've seen Doctor Strange in a Thor movie. We know that Iron Man and the Spider-Man movies. Um, so like you see that crossover, and like, oh, so they know each other. So when they get introduced, it's like we know characters that know each other. So I would think, who would I want Blade to interact with the most out of the group? Um, I don't even know where to place it. I would love for that to be a Tony Stark thing, but we know. But I'm thinking of like Wesley Snipes' Blade character in my head. To see him and Tony go back and forth would just be amazing. Um, I'm trying to think who would more likely he'd run into, because he's not on like a cosmic level, so I don't see him and Doctor Strange really like crossing paths, or him and Thor. Um, it'd be good like Spider-Man crossover, kind of like Captain America thing. But like Blade is at least the Blade from the previous movies, so like how much they're going to show, how much they're going to like overlap those stories, I don't know. But like the Blade movies were dark and graphic and gory. I remember growing up as a kid watching those, and I think it was the first one or the second one. I would always watch it, but it would give me nightmares every single time I would watch it. But they were that great. Those were like the first like superhero movies like I grew up on. That and like the original X-Men, the very first one. Those were like the first couple superhero movies I grew up on, and I loved Blade movies. The third one, look, watching back on the third one, it's not that great, but during the time, all three I loved. Just how they get building on it, and building on it. And I always wanted them to reintroduce it, but I never thought, like, we didn't hear about it at all. I don't know anybody that had the insight that like the Blade announcement was going to be dropped. And I always wanted it to be Wesley Snipes, because he always had the martial arts background and everything. Um, but he's so old, and I would love to see him play a part in the franchise. Like I would really love to see that. Whether he's like the Whistler in this movie, he's the old man to Blade that kind of helps him hunt down vampires. But then it's like, so are we introducing vampires into the MCU as well? Or is he just going to fight villains? Because I'm thinking of the overarching picture. We'll jump around here a little bit. they did have a Fantastic Four and an X Men announcement at Comic Con. So it's like, are we going to be introducing mutants into the MCU, the multiverse, because Doctor Strange movie, and we're going to be introducing vampires as well? Like that's a lot to really like make sense, because I'm already a lot of people are trying to speculate like how are they going to introduce mutants? How have we had mutants on Earth all this time and everything that's happened between the attack on New York, Thanos showing up, Loki kind of attacking multiple times. Like how did all this happen? And we never saw a mutant show up or help. There was no Professor X, there was no Magneto, there was no Storm, no nothing to help in this. So like I see a lot of speculation like maybe the snap in the reverse of the snap did something to people's genes, or it's a multiverse thing where we see X-Men on a different Earth and maybe that's how they make it. So it's not Avengers, it's like an X-Men different Earth. I don't know. I don't know how they plan to introduce it. But I'm interested to see how they do that. So it's like, do you introduce multiverse X mutants and vampires? I don't know. Or do you just make Wesley Snipes? Wesley Snipes. You just make Blade another hero that doesn't fight vampires. But then it's like, is he a vampire himself? Which I guess is okay. Spider-Man, he's not fighting other infected spider people. So they could introduce Wesley as a vampire. Him and Spider-Man could go back. Oh, how'd you turn into? Oh, I got bit by a spider. Oh, what happened to you? My mother was bit by a bat when she birthed, like something like that. I don't know. But yeah, the Blade thing blew my mind. It was the biggest thing I was pretty much hyped for. And the announcement of the Thor: Love and Thunder is, I think, the name of the movie. That we're gonna have a female Thor. Natalie Portman is actually like in good graces with Marvel again because she's been getting shit on for a while and hasn't been included in anything since Thor: Dark World. I know she had arguments with like the producers and the director, so they kind of like exiled her. Not only are they not exiling her, she's pretty much, I would say, going to be leading this movie alongside Chris Hemsworth, and that's going to be pretty big. There is a female Thor in the comics, and that's going to be her. So I'm interested to, I don't know, like how her fighting skills are going to look, or how big they make her. Does she carry around Mjolnir now, and Thor just does Stormbreaker? Is Thor going to eventually die, and she takes it forward? Kind of like how we got rid of Captain America from the spotlight. Does she take over as Thor now? I'm not sure. That was a very big announcement there as well. And they didn't give us a date for X-Men and Fantastic Four, but they did confirm it. I would think we get a Fantastic Four or X-Men movie. I would say, when's Thor 4 supposed to come out? 2021? I'd say 2022. We get our first X-Men and or Fantastic Four movie. Could you see the timeline here? I'll try to blow this up real quick for you guys so we can all see it, because it's actually a little hard for me to see as well, but I don't want it to like take up the entire screen. But yeah, let's just blow this up here real quick so it might cover my face a little bit. And let's lock that back up and then move the blade underneath. There we go. So we see here, Black Widow's coming out early next summer, late spring, 2020. And like the Disney Plus things, I'm not really interested in. I know the Disney Plus stories are going to tie in a little bit to the movies. Not a little bit, but they're going to like kind of leapfrog off each other. So if it's any crucial information that I need to know, I'll watch. But like I'm not really interested in any of the Disney Plus things. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Wanda and Vision, the What If, like if Loki or whatever happened, and then the Loki one itself, and then the Hawkeye as well. So the main things I'm looking at here is Black Widow 2020, the Shang-Chi movie, which comes out in 2021, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness 2021 as well. And then 2021 is a big year because you have Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, and a Thor movie coming out in 2021. So 2021 is going to be pretty big, and I'm sure we'll get another movie in there sometime as well. So I would think when they kind of wrap that up is when we'll get the kind of X-Men announcement, and it's kind of like what mutants do they start with, and how's all that going to go. Doctor Strange is my favorite. It's in my top 2 or 3 standalone Marvel movies, not counting Endgame and Infinity War and Age of Ultron and all that. But as far as standalone, Doctor Strange is like it's either my first or like top three. So I'm super excited for this, and it's a Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch like crossover, and we're going huge multiverse, like deep, deep, deep. And they're saying it's going to be the first MCU like horror film. I don't think it's going to be rated R. So how deep and like dark they take it, um, I'm interested to see what happens with that. The Black Widow movie, like we're all gonna watch it because it's part of the MCU, but there's nothing in her story that I feel like takes us forward. Like what after credit scene or anything could be in there other than her backstory now that her character's dead. So like I'll watch it, but I'm interested to see what plays into her. Like, are we gonna finally see that Budapest thing that her and Hawkeye always talk about? I know they released a trailer, and I was gonna watch it here. They released a teaser, but it looks like maybe you can show it, maybe you can't show it. So I'm not even gonna go there. So the Black Widow movie will be interesting. I mean, that's more or less flash and explosion. That's more hand-to-hand combat, like Captain America stuff type movie. The Eternals movie, I'm really, really hyped for. That comes out in 2020. I'm very big into like the bigger cosmic beings, powers, laser beams, living forever type stuff. So like same with Doctor Strange. I'm really into that like multiverse, planet buster power level. So seeing Angelina Jolie and some of the other characters that they introduced for it, and then I'm interested to see, do they take any of those Eternals and still have them alive and then jump us back to the previous timeline? I mean the current timeline. Do any of the Eternals live or pass anything on to future Eternals that we get to see Eternals brought into the next Avengers movie? Because maybe the next villain is going to be Galactus on this kind of like big eternal scale, and you need somebody stronger than a Thor, than a Captain Marvel that can be on this. I mean, because they're on cosmic levels themselves, but you need kind of more of those to help. Um, because even though you have a Doctor Strange and a Scarlet Witch, they're glass cannons, meaning they have immense power. Like you can put their power and their strength up there with like a Thor and a Captain Marvel just below, but they have the bodies of a human. They can still get shot, they can still get stabbed. Whereas Captain Marvel and Thor, their bodies are just on this otherworldly level. Um, so Doctor Strange and the Multiverse and the Eternals movie, I'm very hyped to see. And I'm interested to see what they do with that Thor movie. Is that going to be it for like our Thor, and it goes forward with Natalie Portman as female Thor? Or is it them kind of side by side? Because we always see him talk about Jane Foster and how she's doing, but they kind of like stopped talking about it since Natalie Portman hasn't really been brought into like, because in the end game they said that they reshot all those shots of like when they go back to 2012 and it's the original Avengers movie, or they go back to um, Guardians of the Galaxy and Peter Quill's there dancing. Supposedly the scene they had with Natalie Portman was just unused footage from Thor: The Dark World. Like that's how much they didn't mess with this chick. But hey, she's back in it, pretty much headlining this movie. So I mean, that's pretty much the big announcements right there. I mean, the Blade thing blew my mind. The fact that we finally got out of their mouths and an announcement of a Fantastic Four and X-Men in the works. My biggest question for that is, and if you're an X-Men fan, do you think we recycle the same mutants, the kind of big headliner mutants? Do you think we get another recasted Charles Xavier, another recasted Magneto, another Wolverine? I feel like you have to have them kind of headline X-Men because those are like the big X-Men. But X-Men get so deep. There's so many mutant so it's like, do they prop up, because Mystique was never that big, like headlined things. But Jennifer Lawrence's face was fucking everywhere, and I know a lot of people hated it. So do they maybe introduce new mutants and then maybe introduce Magneto and Professor X? Because I feel like we know their powers, we know what they can do, we know their relationship, we've seen their story. So how many times can you retell us that story over and over? I would like to see new mutants introduced. Um, I really like Michael Fassbender as Magneto, but I don't think they're gonna I don't think any of them are gonna get recasted in this in this at all. So I'm interested to see the Blade. makings, the workings, if Wesley Snipe is involved at all, what X-Men, what mutants they use to headline the X-Men, who they cast for the Fantastic Four. That's huge. Um, we didn't hear anything Phase 4, but like, does Deadpool ever get brought up into the discussion? The Doctor Strange and of the movie timeline you guys see here, the biggest movie I want to see is the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, then the Eternals, then the Thor movie, then Black Widow last. And the other stuff is Disney. Oh, and the Shang-Chi. I don't know much about Shang-Chi. I know he's like an Asian. I'd say like I'd say he's what's the word I'm looking for? He's like block level strength, like city, like you're like block level, city level, world buster, like planet buster level strength. He's down there at like the Captain America stuff, but I don't know his story deep enough to like go into it. So what they plan to do with him, he's gonna be like another Black Widow, Hawkeye level, you know. He's not flying or healing or anything like that, not to my knowledge at least. So what that story, but I mean, hey, first Asian superhero, that'll be pretty good. Pretty crazy to see. And yeah, man, just the Blade announcement and the Eternals, the Doctor Strange stuff. We've got confirmed dates for that. And when we get this Blade news, I can't wait for that. And kind of anything else to really look forward to. So let me know. I mean, if you guys are big kind of Marvel enthusiasts and watchers like I am, what of Phase 4 are you most excited for? What are you least excited for? And then the last question will be, what was your the biggest shock or announcement to you? Was it Blade? Was it the female Thor? Was it Doctor Strange teaming up with Scarlet Witch? Was it the Eternals cast that they brought out? Just a bunch of stuff there. I mean, it's a great time to be Marvel. I wish it wasn't so far away, but I remember when we were talking about Infinity War, and they started talking about it, and they released a date, and I was like, man, we're never gonna make it to Infinity War. And then I don't know what happened. I feel like I woke up a week later, and I was going to the midnight showing of Infinity War, and then I walked out of there. I'm like, man, Endgame is it's next year. Luckily, Endgame was only a year later, but I'm like, man, Endgame is so far away. We're never going to make it. And I remember standing in line getting my popcorn and drinks and the IMAX midnight showing of Endgame. I'm like, wow, it's over. In 3 hours, it's going to be over. So it seems like a long time now, but hopefully as things go by and we get more announcements and more things come out and we get more things to watch and occupy our time, it'll be here before we know it. So let me know what you guys think. You guys should see this along with the Mr. Rogers, The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and the Walking Dead stuff all on. Do I want to put this up on Saturday or Sunday? Maybe I'll just spit it all out Saturday or spit it all out Sunday. Either way, you'll see this. Monday will be Hunter x Hunter. Tuesday and Thursday is Code Geass on Patreon only. And then Wednesday and Friday are Hunter x Hunter as well. So I appreciate y'all. Like, share, favorite, subscribe. Marvel Phase 4. And as always,